Okay, we're going to get started. Good evening, everyone. I am Jeanette Alomia, Director of Guidance for the Huntington Schools. Should I wait until we're ready to rock and roll with the recording? So, pardon me, just waiting one more minute as we will be recording tonight's event and presentation because there's going to be quite a lot that's going to be shared with you. And if you are a senior parent, you will know that it's quite involved, and you might want to revisit the presentation as well as the PowerPoint, which will be actually both the recording and the PowerPoint presentation will be posted on the Google Classroom for the college office, our website under guidance at our HUFSD website, and the recording will also be posted on the district's YouTube channel. So once again, Jeanette Alomia, District Director of Guidance and Testing for Huntington Schools. Welcome, parents of class of 2023 and 2024. Although the class of 2023 families will be applying for financial aid soon, or they already started, or they already submitted. I think this information will be quite useful and helpful for our class of 2024 parents. I am a class of 2024 parent, so I will be paying close attention to our amazing guest speaker who will be sharing great information to all of us. So without further ado, Julie Van Nostrand is a financial aid counselor at Suffolk County Community College in Riverhead. She has been with the college since 2005 and in financial aid for 5 years. She is also a licensed marriage and family therapist, just a side note, and a certified drug and alcohol abuse counselor. She is currently a doctoral candidate at Hofstra University, so she's quite a busy lady, but here she is offering some of her expertise and great information, and we will also have a Q&A section at the end. So without further ado, here's Julie Van Nostrand.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Ms. Alomia, for inviting me tonight. I'm delighted to be here. So let's get started. This is our Financial Aid 101 presentation. So this is a general overview. We're going to talk about all the different parts of financial aid. I'm going to go through what goes into how an award is determined. I'm going to talk a little bit about once you get financial aid, that's great. How do you keep financial aid, which is a whole other conversation. And I'm going to talk a little bit, some specifics about things at Suffolk. However, I think it's very translatable to almost any school that you go to. Okay, so let's just get started. Just so you know, if you are thinking about coming to Suffolk, we do have on our website information like printable forms. And again, I imagine that a lot of colleges would have that same thing. For example, if you're interested in applying for a loan, if you're interested in, if a parent wants a Parent Plus loan, those documentation is available on our website. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about appeals, not making satisfactory academic progress. Again, pretty much almost positive that all colleges will have that kind of mechanism available. But these forms are available on our website. Oh, and if you get selected for verification, we are going to talk about that a little bit too. We have financial aid workshops that we run. This is, as I said, Financial Aid 101. There is a Financial Aid 102, which is a step-by-step, screen-by-screen mock FAFSA. So I actually just did one last night. So I kind of go in and I pretend I'm a student and I just show you screen by screen what to expect when you are completing a FAFSA. And I also point out various pitfalls and places where we often see that mistakes are made so that you can avoid making mistakes. So if you want to reach out to us, there's Financial Aid Ammerman, which is in Selden, Financial Aid East, which is where I am, in Riverhead, and of course West, which is in Brentwood. So we're going to talk about sources of aid. We're going to talk about grants. We're going to talk about federal work study, loans, and scholarships. The key that unlocks the door for all financial aid is the FAFSA. And I want everybody to see that the first word in that acronym is the word free. There are a lot of unscrupulous, nasty people online who will charge you to do a FAFSA or charge you to file a FAFSA. Filing a FAFSA is free. You do not need to pay to file your FAFSA. The way that you access it is at studentaid.gov. There's an unbelievable amount of information on studentaid.gov. Information about loans, information about the FAFSA, information about going to graduate school and getting financial aid for that as well. So you might want to spend some time looking around, poking around, and seeing what's there. A lot of information. So like I said, no one should ever pay to file a FAFSA. This is a question I get a lot. What are they looking at? How do they determine a financial aid award? These are the things that they are looking at when you complete your FAFSA to determine whether or not you're going to get a grant or you're going to be loan eligible only. All right, so grant money is money you do not have to pay back. Okay, loan money, of course, you have to pay it back. So what are they looking at? They're looking at household income. That includes the student. So when you're doing your FAFSA, you will see that there's going to be a portion for the student and there's going to be a portion for the parent. And if the student made money in a particular year, they're going to ask you to report that income. Household size. How many people are living on this income? Number in college. How many people in the household living on this income are going to college? Assets. Now, this does not include the house in which you live. It includes if you have a second home, if you have other rental property, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, college savings plans. That's what they're looking at as an asset. So, yes. Now, the FAFSA for the 23-24 academic year opened just a few days ago on October 1st. So right now, if you go on to studentaid.gov and you start doing a FAFSA, there are 2 FAFSAs open. So don't get confused. Don't do the 22-23 FAFSA, because that's for students who are either attending now or planning to attend maybe in the spring. If your student is planning to attend school in the fall of 2023, you want to do the 23-24 FAFSA. Okay. If your student is planning to come to college the following year, you want to do the 24-25 FAFSA, which will open on October 1st, 2023. So it's really confusing. So just bear that in mind. Think of academic year. Think of school year. I mentioned already about our financial aid workshops. The important thing here is that FAFSA always runs 2 years behind. They call it prior. So if you are going to be doing the 23-24 FAFSA, you will be needing to report your 2021 income. It's always 2 years behind. Now, that can pose problems for folks, particularly after what we've been through with the pandemic and everything. We've had to make adjustments for people's FAFSAs quite a lot. So basically, if you find yourself in a position where your 2021 taxes, your financial information, your income from 2021 is substantially different than your income today, that your financial picture today, please go and see a financial aid professional, because we can help you adjust your financial picture so that it more accurately reflects your ability to pay today, not 2 years ago. Okay? If it's pretty much the same, then prior. Okay? But if it's not, and as I said, I've worked with a number of people, particularly over the last couple of years, who have unfortunately lost jobs, unfortunately have lost family members. So, of course, their income from 2 years ago was substantially different than what it is today. And we're able to make adjustments to reflect that. One of the most important things when you're doing your FAFSA is to create an FSA ID and password. This is your electronic signature. It's really important that you have pen and paper handy when you're creating an FSA ID and password. You're going to need to make one for one parent and the student. They have to be completely separate, not the same email addresses. So definitely write it down, keep it in a safe place. You will use it every year. You cannot get a new one because it's hooked up to your social security number. So every time you say, oh, I'll just get a new FSA ID and password, they're going to say, oh, no, I'm sorry. This one is already connected to a social security number. You have to go back and recreate your password. Yes? It should remain the same. Yes, absolutely. Right. Okay, so it's always constant. You can't change it. Believe me, it's a very huge process to try and substantiate to the federal government that you are who you say you are if you can't remember your challenge question answers and you can't remember your FSA ID and password. You will have to submit all kinds of documentation to the federal government for them to, as I said, make sure you are who you say you are. And we should all feel good about that because they are protecting your personal information. This is highly sensitive personal data. So you want to make sure that it's being kept as private as possible. Yes? They're going to keep on asking you to go back to try and get this FSA ID. It's really very useful. Yes. And I also recommend, if possible, that parents and students do the FAFSA together. Because there are going to be questions that you know that the student doesn't know, that the student knows that you don't know. So it's best if you're together to do it. It'll look that way. So this is what the FSA ID and password site looks like. So you just go right there and it says, get started. This is the data retrieval tool. So this is really, really great. When you have a working FSA ID and password, you can utilize it to connect directly from the FAFSA form right to the IRS and download all of your financial information. Well, not all of it, most of it, 90% of it. You will still need your tax return for certain questions, but the bulk of it will get downloaded directly from the IRS right into your FAFSA form. It's really a wonderful tool for a couple of reasons. So I mentioned earlier about verification. So the federal government selects 1 out of every 4 students completely randomly for a process called verification, which means they will hold up your aid or your student's aid until you submit your tax documentation to the financial aid office to be verified. So some people never get verified. Other people get verified every year. I've worked with twins who, like one twin gets verified, the other one doesn't. It's completely random. But you will need to submit your tax documentation to the financial aid office so that we can check it and make sure it's all correct. All right. When you use the data retrieval tool, you do not need to submit your financial documentation because we know it's correct. It's come directly from the IRS. All you need to do is fill out a form and you're good. So it's much cleaner, it's much easier. I've worked with many, many students who've come into my office completely dumbfounded. They don't understand why they're not getting any grant aid. And when we look back, we say, oh, it looks like you reported, like you're making $250,000 a year because they added a zero here or there. So it really skews their financial aid picture, and that's why they're not getting any aid. So this avoids errors. Because as I was mentioning earlier to someone who I was speaking with, every time you touch the FAFSA and you go in and you make a little correction and you make a little change, you sort of up the likelihood that you will be selected for verification. So the least amount of times that you go in and touch it, the better. So the only information that you will need to put into the data retrieval tool will be your address. So let's say you moved within the 2 years. You want to use the address that matches the tax return, and you'll be able to transfer your documentation. This is a very big question. I get this all the time. I thought I was independent. Okay, so in the world, right, we think, well, you're 18 now, you've graduated from high school, you are considered an adult. For the federal government, you are not considered an adult or independent from your parents until you are age 24. In certain circumstances, for New York State aid, you are not considered an independent adult student until you're age 36, believe it or not. Yes, under certain circumstances. Okay, so most of the time, students will be dependent, except when they fall into these categories. They're 24 years of age or older. They've been in foster care since age 13. They have a legal guardian. Important distinction here, that's different than custody. Custody is not the same as legal guardianship. We need to have paperwork from a court that says legal guardian, not custody. You have legal dependents. You have people who rely on you for their financial support. You're active military or you're a veteran. Your parental information is unavailable because your parents are deceased, they're incarcerated, or there's some other block. There's some other reason why you can't get your parental financial information. So in those situations, of course, we're going to require some documentation to show that there's really sort of been a severing of a relationship there. Please come and see a financial aid professional. We can help you. We can help you to substantiate, document that you are indeed independent if you don't fall into any of those neat little categories. All right? This is a very text-heavy slide. I'm going to try my best to make it as easy as possible. One of the things that we find is a huge problem, a lot of mistakes are made in the FAFSA, is the question about are your parents, or what is the marital status of your parents as of today? So, if you are a student whose parents are divorced, but you live with one of them and their new spouse, your parents are married. So a lot of times people will read that, or students will read that and say, what is the marital status of my parents as of today? And they'll read, my parents are divorced, even though I'm living with a parent and their new spouse. So that's a huge flag. And then we have to go back in, we have to collect documentation from the student, we have to go into the FAFSA and make a correction and sort of reconcile that confusing bit of information. All right? So a lot of times I have students come in and say, well, my step-parent does not want to be involved in this. If your parent and your step-parent are married, they will have to be involved. It is required that they submit their tax information. Even if they weren't married in 2021, maybe they filed separately, we're going to need both of their tax information to put into the FAFSA. Okay, so this is another representation, if you will. I know it's kind of tiny, but this is stuff that's available on federalstudentaid.gov that will more clearly help you understand whose information needs to be put into the FAFSA. Actually, in the FAFSA document itself, in the application, there is a link where it says parents. That's actually a link, and it'll go through all of these different scenarios and help you to better understand how do I answer this question accurately. See, there it is, right? Also, be very mindful of the banner. See the banner that's up on the top left there? It says parent information. That banner is going to change. It's going to say student, it's going to say parent. It's going to say student, it's going to say parent. Be mindful of that, because a lot of times people will just go through and just answer the questions for themselves if they're a parent, and they repeat all their information twice for the student, and then we have to go in and make corrections. So you want to avoid corrections because, as I said before, it sort of ups the ante about potentially getting selected for verification. Every time you touch the FAFSA, it can take up to 2 weeks for the changes to process. It's unlike anything else on the internet that's instant. It's not. It's not instant. I have people coming into my office all the time saying, I did my FAFSA last night. Is my financial aid here? It'll take up to 2 weeks for us to get to it. For us to get it, I should say. So you don't want to touch the FAFSA. You want to touch it as few times as possible. So there is the link where it says, as of today, what is the marital status of your parents? So that's how you can, as I said, if there's any confusion around that question, that can help you. So let's go back to this eligibility determination, right? We talked about income, we talked about household size, we talked about number in college, we talked about the assets and what an asset is and what it is not. What kind of financial aid is out there? It's the first one is the Pell Grant. So that is when you complete your FAFSA, you are completing the FAFSA for potentially getting a Pell Grant. There's also SEOG. SEOG is additional federal aid. There are loans, and there are two types of loans: direct and subsidized and unsubsidized. So a subsidized loan means that the federal government will pay the interest on the loan while the student is in school. Unsubsidized means they won't. And that's a function of your EFC. That is a function of your expected family contribution. We're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. There's also a Parent Plus loan. And there's work study. Now, right now, I think work study is about $14 an hour. Work study is a kind of federal aid. Rather than the money coming from the federal government right to the school, the money comes to the student in the form of a paycheck. Right now, on our campus, I think that there are beginning to be some opportunities for work study off campus, but for the most part, they're on campus. They're in an office like mine, the counseling center, or maybe in the library or in another academic office. And as I said, the students work and they get a paycheck. Important to note about Parent Plus loans, there is a credit check for Parent Plus loans. There is no credit check for a student loan. And you can see the interest rates there. Right now, the interest rate is 3.73% for student loans, and for Parent Plus loans, it's 6.28%. So EFC, expected family contribution. A lot of times people read the EFC and they think that's how much they're going to get or how much they're going to need to put in. It's just a number. It's just an index number, okay? And it is a measure of your family's financial strength. It's calculated in a formula. I actually have had to do it manually once to see, and there are all kinds of charts and graphs and different things that are looked at based on how many people are in the household to come up with this EFC number. It's used to determine your eligibility for a grant versus loan. So let's kind of dive into it a little bit. So what I've done is I've blown up the Pell chart here, all right? So here's the 22-23 Pell chart because the 23-24 Pell chart has not yet become available. So if you were coming to school right now, this is the amount of financial aid that you could potentially be receiving. All right. So if your EFC is 0, that means you're eligible for the maximum amount of aid. And as you can see, it's prorated based on the number of credits. I just blew up a very small part of it. So you can see if you're 12 hours or more, which is full time, you would be eligible for $6,895 worth of aid annually, or $3,448 and change per semester. That does not change depending on what school you're going to. So if you're going to go to a school whose tuition is, $10,000 per semester, you're still going to get $3,000 something from FAFSA. So as you can see, as your EFC goes up, the amount of aid that you are eligible for goes down. So if your EFC was like 222, you would get $6,645 per year, or $3,223 per semester. And again, it goes across if you're half-time, if you're less than half-time, it is incremental based on the number of hours that you take. So, if your EFC is beyond 6,207, if you're way down at the bottom of the chart, that means you're no longer eligible for a grant. You're still eligible for financial aid, but it's called a loan. Okay, so that's the difference. So if you fall anywhere in the chart, you may get an award. You may have to supplement the award with a loan, but if you are beyond 6,207, that means you're no longer eligible for a grant. We talked about this a little bit more, the special circumstances. Like I said, if you find yourself in a situation where your taxes don't reflect your current reality, come see us. We can definitely help you. All right, dependency override. Again, we touched on this a little bit earlier as well. Like I said, there are times when those nice little neat categories about having been in foster care, or you're in legal guardianship, or maybe there's just been a severing of a relationship, but there's not all of those other things, but there's still been a severing of the relationship. Please come and see us. We can help you. All right, so now we're going to move on to state aid, which is called TAP, Tuition Assistance Program. It is typically for full-time students only. Just this year, they have opened up part-time TAP. Part-time TAP used to be really complicated, but this year they've decided to open up part-time TAP. So there is availability for TAP for part-time, and there's also aid for part-time study. That's a completely separate application. Believe it or not, it's a paper application. So if you are planning to come, or the student is below 12 credits, there is eligibility for state aid. After you complete the FAFSA, there's usually a link at the end, right there. It says, start your state application. If you can, do it. Because a lot of your information, particularly your demographic information, is going to get migrated right over from your FAFSA application right into your TAP application. The other thing that's important is that in the FAFSA, you can put up to 10 schools. In the TAP application, you can only put 1. So they're going to use that first school as the school that they're going to look to give a TAP award to. If the student decides to go to a different school, it's not the same as the one on the TAP application, you're going to have to go in manually and change that. All right? But I definitely recommend that you do this because it's just smoother, it's just easier. After you submit, they'll say, congratulations, you've submitted. Would you like to start your state application? Do it. So this is what the state application looks like. There will be a separate ID and password for the TAP application, but it's not necessary for the parent to have one, only for the student. Again, write it down. Keep it in a safe place. However, in the past, the parent didn't need to sign the TAP application. Only in the last 2 years, now they require that the parent put in their driver's license number and they electronically sign the TAP application. So that's new in the last 2 years. And this TAP application will go like that in comparison to the FAFSA. It should take about an hour or so, maybe a little less, if you use the data retrieval tool to complete the FAFSA. This will go in like 10 minutes. Yes? So there really... Okay, so there really is. The question is there a deadline for TAP? Or there is really no deadline. I mean, today, if you're in class today, and you come into my office and say, I haven't done my FAFSA or my TAP. Okay. The real deadline doesn't occur until next June. So, for both of them. And there are certain rules for certain schools around when classes end, when the term ends. So you definitely want to do it before the term ends. But you have until 2023. Mm-hmm. You can apply. You can apply. It's just that if the school changes, you just have to go in and make the change. You can just apply using whatever school. The award will remain the same no matter what school you go to. Okay. So a lot of resources on collegegoal.ny.gov, so you can definitely, if you want, take a look at that, take advantage of that. Yes. Yes. But unfortunately, there is no data retrieval tool for this. Okay. Yes. Okay, so we've spent a lot of time talking about how to get financial aid. Let's talk about how to keep financial aid. Right. So there's a thing called satisfactory academic progress, or SAP. So what I've done is I've blown up the SAP chart here so you can take a look at it. So the federal government says that you must complete 67% of the courses that you attempt. So this is a chart of that 67%, and it is cumulative. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, is your first semester, you're taking 12 credits, you're attempting 12 credits, right? And, you're really gung-ho and you're happy and things are going well, but you hit a snag. And out of the 12 credits that you signed up for in September, you're really only going to pass 6. You might have a 4.0 in those 2 classes, but you didn't make SAP because you had to have completed 8 credits in order to maintain your financial aid. Since you've only done 50%, you only passed 50% of the courses that you attempted, you've lost your aid. Maybe you passed all 8, but you got a 1.5. You've lost your aid. There is a mechanism by which you can get it back. You can either get back on the chart, or you can submit an appeal. Appeals are typically one-time only things. Appeals say, this thing happened in the middle of the semester. This got in my way. There's something that happened that prevented me from being as academically successful as I could have been, and here's the documentation around it. Maybe you were hurt. Maybe somebody in your family was ill, and perhaps there was a death. We need documentation to support that, and you can appeal and get your financial aid back. But as I said, it's typically a one-time thing, and there are strict rules around getting your aid back. You can no longer withdraw, fail, be unsuccessful throughout your whole career. You have to keep on going. Now, so let's just say you don't want to do the appeal, you want to try and get back on the chart. It's the following semester. You're attempting another 12 credits. So now you're at the bottom there. You have now attempted 24 credits. You have to pass 16 with a 1.7 GPA in order to get your aid back. So it's cumulative. So every time you add credits, you up the ante of completion. Once you have attempted 96 credits, you are no longer eligible for aid. Then we have to do a whole other thing to determine if you have any eligibility left. All right, so the federal government says you have 150% of credits, 150% of 96 credits to complete your degree. So we have to go back and do a mathematical calculation to determine how much eligibility you have left once you've hit that 96 credit mark. Okay? Any questions about this? This is very important. A lot of times, I met with a student today who, wanted to withdraw from all of her classes because she wasn't happy and things were not going well for her. And I had to have that difficult conversation about, you're going to lose your aid next semester because you haven't completed, you will not have completed any courses. So there are, we talked about work-study grants, loans, scholarships. As I mentioned, with loans, there's no credit check. You have to complete a master promissory note and complete entrance counseling. All of that is done on studentaid.gov. The entrance counseling is something that, the federal government, I'm sure you've heard, there's been a lot in the news fairly recently about, debt forgiveness and the amount of debt that students get themselves into. So the loan counseling is meant to help people understand that once you're finished with school, you have this pesky loan out there that you have to pay back. And, you don't want to overborrow. So here's some help kind of navigating the whole idea of having a loan. Yes? Yes. There you go. So there's a maximum amount that you can pay. So for dependent students, right? So under age 24, first year, your maximum amount is $5,500. 3,500. Now it depends on. It could be sub or unsub. Again, it's a factor of your EFC. Once you see your EFC, you can make a determination about how much sub you can get or how much unsub. You can take all unsub. Maybe you can have $3,500 subsidized, and then you can get an additional $2,000 that's always unsub. Now don't forget, if you get $5,500, that's a year loan. So it's going to get split. That's $2,700 this semester. So it's not $5,500 for this semester. It's only like $2,700 because the federal government also puts out a little bit for origination. Okay, so there's a teeny little fee for that. So as you can see, the amount goes up based on the number of credits that you take. So if you are a sophomore, you have 32 credits or more. If you're a sophomore, then your loan amount, your base loan amount goes up to 45, and then you take another 2,000, always unsub, to bring you up to 6,500. So if you are a student who is ineligible for FAFSA, for federal student aid, there is a thing in New York State called the Jose Peralta Dream Act. So it is for students who are DACA, or they have other T visas, U visas, temporary protected status. The criteria for that is that you have to have graduated from a New York State school, and you have to upload your final high school transcript, and you'd be eligible for aid through the Jose Peralta Dream Act. You do not have to fill out a FAFSA, and there's no reporting. There's no reporting or anything like that going to the government. Excelsior Scholarship. Has anybody heard of the Excelsior Scholarship? Right, okay. So that was like a big thing a few years ago, free college in New York. So a lot of rules, a lot of regulations around Excelsior. You have to be a full-time student. You have to be on track to graduate if you're in a 2-year school, in 2 years. In a 4-year school, 4 years. Your family eligibility is up to $125,000. So if your family income is above that, you're no longer eligible for the scholarship. It is what is known as a last dollar scholarship. So let's just say your EFC puts you somewhere in the middle of that EFC chart. So maybe you're getting a little bit of a grant. And maybe you're getting a little bit of a TAP award. Excelsior will cover whatever's left over of tuition only, and then that's it. They will not cover books. They will not cover fees. So they're gonna come in after your FAFSA has paid, after TAP has paid. They'll make up the difference of tuition only. Yes. Like I said, you have to be enrolled in at least 12 college level credits. You have to have 30 credits in the year. So 15 and 15 per semester. So you have to be really careful. Sometimes we work with students who are coming to the college who are not quite ready to handle certain college level work. So they get put in classes that are meant to strengthen their work. Personally, I took the college placement test years ago, and if I needed to enroll in Suffolk today, I would need to go to developmental math, because I don't go home and do algebra for fun every night. So sometimes those courses, those developmental courses, are not college level credit. So when you look at your schedule and you say, okay, well, I have 14 credits, but 4 of them may be a developmental math class, then you really only have 10 credits for Excelsior. And then you're not eligible. So if you are interested in having Excelsior, please see a financial aid person when you make your schedule. Make sure you have the right number of credits. If you fail a class, you will need to make that up either in the winter session or over the summer. It's going to come out of your pocket. Excelsior is not going to pay for it. And like I said, you have to get those 30 credits in a year. Yes? That's why it's important to have that FSA ID and password written down in a safe place so you have it. For Excelsior, yes. I don't think it's open now. I think it's closed now. Like I said, you can go onto their website and put in your email, and they will send you an email when it reopens. So I want to say the next time it's going to be opened, probably toward the end of the year, maybe November, and they're only going to keep it open for like a couple of weeks, maybe a month, and then they shut it down. Yes. So, like I said, it covers fall and spring semesters only. If you need a winter session class, summer session, you can't come back to school and say, hey, that free college thing? I already have a bachelor's degree, but I'd like to get another one. No. One and done. Changing majors is a huge problem. I worked with a student a couple of years ago, came in. He was a culinary student. He was Excelsior. After the first semester, he came and said, I hate culinary. Get me out. He spent a lot of time and a lot of money over the winter session and the summer session taking courses in his new major, which was criminal justice. Because even though he had a whole bunch of credits, maybe he was on track with, he had completed credits, but they didn't complete his major. They didn't go into his major, so they don't count. So like I said, he spent a lot of time and a lot of money over the winter session and the summer session making up all of those credits in order to maintain his Excelsior scholarship. You can also, if you have AP classes, if there's early college, we have an early college program at the college. You can take those courses and you can kind of put them in your back pocket so that if things don't work out and class doesn't work out and you fail, or you have to withdraw, you can say, oh, I took that sociology class when I was still in high school. Can I use those 3 credits? Yes, you can. Okay, so this is just unique stuff that's happening in college. I'm sure most colleges do this. We're going to let you know if you're missing things, right? If you're selected for verification, we're going to let you know. You need to submit documentation. Also, we're going to let you know, this is the verification stuff. We need a copy of your dependent worksheet or your parent's tax return or your tax return. Also, we're going to let you know if you're not making satisfactory academic progress, and there's a link there for the appeal. Another thing very important, financially, it's not going to cover classes that are not in your degree. So a lot of times, students will come in and say, I'm full-time, I have 12 credits. Right, but that 3-credit basket weaving class is not in your degree, so therefore, you're only getting financial aid for 9 credits. However, if you get 12 credits in your degree, then you can take whatever you want. Then it's free. Yes? Right. And like I said, if you have 12 credits in your whatever your major is, and then you decide to take one other class just because you're interested, fine, no problem. It's when you dip below the 12 credits, that's when you're financially becoming affected. Scholarships. We have a whole bunch of scholarships on our website. There's a lot of information about scholarships at your local library, at Rotary Club, Lions Club. There's all kinds of scholarships available there too. Like I mentioned earlier, early college program, juniors and seniors can take college level courses at Suffolk. It's if you're a participating school district, it's $57 a credit, and like I said, it's great. You can get some of your credits ahead of time, put them in your back pocket if you're an Excelsior student, and have them there in case you need them. Bank Mobile is just the way that our college gets refunds back to students. So if you're getting a Pell Grant, if you're getting maximum Pell and you're getting maximum TAP, a student can expect to get about $2,000 worth of a refund that is meant for books, food, transportation, all the kind of ancillary things. When you go online and you look at colleges, they're required by law to publish a thing called cost of attendance, right? And that it's going to include all of those things. It's going to include tuition, it's going to include books, it's going to include room and board, food, housing, all of those things. So it's not the it's more than just tuition. So if you want to take a look at that, that's a totally separate thing, but the refund that students get would be meant to cover all of those additional expenses. Okay, I know I've given you a tremendous amount of information. Does anybody have any questions? Yes. Okay, I'm sorry. Is it first come, first serve to apply? I've heard that kind of like as a rumor. I don't see that. I see that people who do their FAFSAs in June, I don't recommend it. But I don't see, I've never had the experience where the government says, sorry, we've run out of money. Never had that experience. I think there was another question here. Yes. So if you put in the question is, if you choose 6 schools to put into FAFSA, will your documentation, will your information go to all those 6 schools? Yes. It'll go to the 7th school, right. Up to 10, yes. So let's talk about applying to the school as opposed to doing the FAFSA, right? Those are 2 different things. Okay, so if you apply to the school, but you never alert FAFSA that you're interested in that school, your information is not going to go there. You have to alert FAFSA. Right. FAFSA will receive the information whether you applied or not. That is correct. Yes. Yes, you have to remove, you can't, you have to delete a school and add a school. Delete. But the information will likely have already arrived at that school, yes. Yes. There was a question over here, and I think another one over here. Yes. Mm-hmm. But if you've submitted to, let's say, my school, and you decide, okay, I don't want to go there anymore, it won't vanish from my system. I'll still have it. Does that make sense? Right, you just have to, every time you add, if you've got 10 schools and you say, oh, I want that 11th school, you got to take one out and replace it. But that school probably has already gotten that information. As I said, I forgot my cards, but I can give you my email verbally if you'd like. Okay. Yes, of course, of course. So my email is V as in victory, A, N as in Nancy, N as in Nancy, O, J, at sunysuffolk.edu. Okay. And as I said, Mrs. Alomia could certainly reach out to me. Yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. One is completely independent of the other. Actually, you want your financial aid there so that this way they have a very clear picture of, what kind of financial aid picture they're going to offer you. Yes, it used to be. The question is about selective service. So there hasn't been a draft in the United States in over 50 years. However, I want to say last year or the year before, you would not be eligible for federal financial aid if you were a male student and declined to be registered. That would automatically make you ineligible for aid. They have since changed that. They're still going to ask you. I don't know if they're planning to do away with the question. The question is still in the FAFSA form, but if the student chooses not to register, it will not impede them from receiving financial aid. I believe it is still the law, yes. I believe it is still required. I don't know. I don't know what precipitated the change from federal aid. I just know that it used to be a sticking point where, if I was doing a FAFSA with a young man who said, no, I don't want to do that, I had to tell them that then they automatically made themselves ineligible. Right, but the FAFSA is not going to report back, and even if you say no, I don't want to. I don't think, personally, I haven't heard of any consequences around that. Are there? Maybe, but I haven't heard of any. Yes. So the question was, how quickly does the school get the information? As I said, it can take up to 2 weeks. It can take up to 2 weeks for us to receive your FAFSA information, which is frustrating because, like everything else on the internet, right? Everybody thinks it's just going to be instant. In this particular case, it's not. So I made a lot of students who come in, like I said, who are ready to sign up for classes and they think their financial aid is there because they did their FAFSA the night before. Really? Okay. Our experience is a little bit longer, at least a week. At least a week. I've not seen that. It's very possible that it is there, but I have not seen it. I know on my end, if I go in and I'm going to make a correction for a student, if another correction is already processing, I can't do it. It'll say, correction processing. You can't make a new correction. Gotta wait for this one to finish and then go back and do another one.
So there is the student SAR, the student aid report, that you can always see the confirmation and the history of the colleges that your student is applying. Also, for those students applying ED, early decision, which is Mrs. Walsh clearly and in detail explained what that is, which is a binding contract. So students apply to that school. And so there are deadlines when it comes to the FAFSA. And many institutions, especially our private institutions, will require you to do the CSS profile through the collegeboard.org. So that's an additional financial aid application, and it's quite lengthy. So I would urge you to contact colleges to see if they not only require or ask for the FAFSA, the TAB, obviously, but also the CSS profile. We will have a FAFSA completion night, November 2nd at 7 p.m., where we're going to be going over, I know it might be a little tedious, but we're going to go over item by item, question by question. You can, if, doesn't matter whether you just started the FAFSA or you're already well into it, you can bring your questions and we will have assistance. And Ms. Van Ostran is going to help us. I haven't decided yet if this should be a virtual versus a face-to-face platform, but please save the date, November 2nd at 7 p.m. We will have a FAFSA completion night, which is a continuation of this night, this evening. So if you are comfortable and we responded to all of your questions and you're confident and you can, definitely, you feel like you can go ahead and submit, then submit. But if you still have some questions or concerns, if you have specific, circumstances that might prevent you from submitting the FAFSA or the TAP, I would wait. So that's why I didn't want to space it out later into the year. So November 2nd is still early enough to have this, to meet any deadlines for any early decision deadlines or any other scholarship opportunities that maybe some institutions might be requiring for you to do this process sooner rather than later. So I would bring laptops. Yes, good question. We will, I will bring, I'm looking at Chris, but you're not the one. But I will be talking to technology to provide us with Chromebooks because I'm sure we have plenty of those around. So we will have devices available. But feel free to bring your own device, not a phone, but a Chromebook or your laptop. And if we're doing it virtually, it would be a share screen bit by bit by bit. And we've done this in the past, and it's served very effective because then parents can just put in the chat their specific question, or they can just do a private, chat with the presenter with any questions that they may not want others to read. So we can accommodate either way. But the platform will be communicated whether it be in person or virtual with ample time so you can plan ahead. But just save the date, November 2nd, if you need this one-on-one, more one-on-one assistance. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. You've been a great audience, and thank you so much to our illustrious presenter, Julie Van Ostran from Suffolk County Community College. And thank you all.